League of Legends players are furious. Again. This time, the ire is directed at Riot Games' decision to rework Viktor, one of the game's oldest champions, to align more closely with his portrayal in the critically acclaimed series Arcane. For Viktor mains, this isn't just another update, it feels like a betrayal. Meanwhile, Arcane fans can't understand the outrage. After all, doesn't this new version of Viktor look better, feel more relatable, and appeal to a broader audience? Well, yes, no, well, you know. Riot Games' Arcane was a cultural phenomenon when it debuted on Netflix in 2021. It wasn't just a hit, it was a critical and commercial success that transcended gaming audiences. For the first time, the lore of League of Legends captured the attention of mainstream viewers, winning over audiences who had never touched the game itself. This success gave Riot a unique opportunity to expand their universe beyond gaming, but it also sparked a growing divide within their community. League players, particularly those who have been around since the game's earliest days, are beginning to feel alienated. Viktor's rework, while only the latest in a long series of changes, has become a lightning rod for this frustration. To League players, Riot's focus on aligning the game's universe with Arcane represents a shift away from its roots. To Arcane fans, it's a necessary step forward for a game that has always struggled to balance its gameplay with its story. But why has Viktor's rework sparked so much controversy? Why do League players feel so resentful toward Arcane despite its success? And is Riot's strategy of integrating Arcane into the game's lore and design really the right move for League's future? Well, kind of, but no. But yes? Yeah. Viktor has always been a niche but beloved champion in League of Legends. His dark, ruthless character, a scientist obsessed with transcending humanity through mechanical augmentation, embodied a particular kind of player fantasy. He wasn't a flashy or popular pick like Jinx or Yasuo, but for the players who connected with him, Viktor was deeply personal. In gameplay, Viktor's methodical, calculated playstyle complemented his lore. His focus on precision, adaptation, and control made him a favorite among players who enjoyed thinking strategically and dominating their lane over time. He was more than just a champion, he was an identity for the players who chose him. In Arcane, Viktor is nearly unrecognizable from his League of Legends counterpart. Instead of a cold, calculating scientist, he's a young inventor struggling with illness, moral dilemmas, and a desperate need to prove himself. His humanized, sympathetic portrayal gives him emotional depth and relatability, but it also departs from the themes that defined him in the game. Visually, Arcane Viktor reflects this shift. Gone is the fully augmented metallic figure from League. Now he's Metal Twink Jesus. For Arcane fans, this version of Viktor feels modern and compelling. For League players, it feels like a completely different character. Riot's recent announcement of a visual rework for Viktor aligns his design more closely with his Arcane counterpart. His updated appearance trades the cold, mechanical aesthetic for a design that emphasizes his human origins, signaling a clear attempt to bridge the gap between the two versions of the character. For Viktor mains, this change feels like a betrayal. The dark, augmentation-obsessed Viktor they've played for years is being erased in favor of a version that aligns better with Arcane. This isn't just a cosmetic update, it's a rewriting of his identity. And for a community that has already endured years of lore retcons, this feels like yet another instance of Riot prioritizing aesthetics over the heart of their champions. Meanwhile, Arcane fans view the rework as a long overdue improvement. To them, League's original Viktor is outdated and unappealing, a relic of a game that has struggled to modernize its storytelling. The rework, they argue, makes Viktor more accessible to a wider audience, and reflects Riot's commitment to evolving its universe. These two perspectives encapsulate the larger tension between League's longtime players and its newer Arcane-focused audience. Viktor's rework may be the flashpoint, but it's emblematic of a deeper conflict within Riot's player base. League players aren't going anywhere, but neither are Arcane viewers. League of Legends players have been in it for the long haul. Many have invested years, if not more than a decade, into the game, logging thousands of hours, unlocking champions, skins, and mastery levels, and immersing themselves in a competitive ecosystem unlike any other. For better or worse, the game has become a cornerstone of their gaming identity. But for these players, the relationship with League is complicated. Ask any longtime player about the game and you'll hear a mix of admiration, frustration, and outright disdain. League has earned a reputation as one of the most toxic and punishing games to play, yet its players stick around, partly out of love for the game's depth, and partly because they've invested too much to walk away. When Arcane debuted on Netflix, it reached an audience far beyond the gaming community. Its success was built on compelling storytelling, rich character development, and stunning animation, capturing the attention of casual gamers and non-gamers alike. This is the audience Riot hopes to bring into the fold, a younger, more diverse group that might not be familiar with the infamously steep learning curve and toxic culture of League of Legends. However, the reality is that Arcane viewers and League players are fundamentally different demographics. While Arcane fans admire the world of Runeterra, many of them have little interest in playing the game that inspired it. The reasons are simple. League of Legends is notoriously hard to learn, with a brutal competitive environment that punishes newcomers. It's a game where even veterans frequently complain about toxicity and balance issues, so why would someone fresh from watching Arcane want to dive in? The data reflects this reality. In November 2021, coinciding with Arcane's release, League of Legends averaged over 150 million players, a noticeable spike compared to earlier months. However, this growth was temporary. By February 2022, daily active users reached a peak of 14 million, but fell to 9.9 million by mid-2023. This indicates that while Arcane brought in new and returning players, many didn't stick with the game for the long term. Riot's integration of Arcane into League's lore and design reflects a bold strategy: to use Arcane's mainstream success to revitalize the game and attract new players. By aligning champions like Viktor, Jinx, and Vi with their Arcane portrayals, Riot hopes to create a cohesive universe that feels accessible to new fans while still engaging its longtime players. But this strategy is fraught with challenges. League players already feel alienated by the constant changes to the game's lore and design, and the prioritization of Arcane threatens to widen that gap. Meanwhile, the very nature of League, a high-stakes, hyper-competitive MOBA, makes it an ill fit for the casual audience Arcane appeals to. Riot's gamble is clear: integrate Arcane into League to attract new players and younger audiences. But the reality is more complicated. League players are unlikely to leave, they're too invested, but they're becoming increasingly resentful of Riot's shifting priorities. Meanwhile, Arcane fans are unlikely to stick with League in the long term, no matter how many Arcane-inspired changes Riot makes. This disconnect between Riot's two audiences creates a volatile situation, where every change, like Viktor's rework, feels like a compromise that satisfies no one. League of Legends has never had a stable lore. In its earliest days, the game's story revolved around the League of Legends itself, a fantastical organization that convened champions to settle disputes. Players might remember the newsletter updates that chronicled the quirky exploits of their favorite champions, from Fiddlesticks to Ryze. But as the game grew, Riot abandoned this concept, opting instead to expand the universe of Runeterra. While this shift brought more depth to the world, it also came at a cost. Champions were frequently retconned or reworked to fit new narrative directions. For players who had invested emotionally in these characters, it often felt like the rug was being pulled out from under them. A clear example of Riot's shifting priorities is Legends of Runeterra, a card game designed to expand Runeterra's lore. LOR introduced rich storytelling and explored regions and champions that were often overlooked in League of Legends itself. However, in January 2024, Riot announced a significant reduction in the development team for LOR due to financial challenges. The game had been operating at a loss, with development costs exceeding revenue. As part of its strategic pivot, Riot downsized the LOR team and shifted focus to its PvE mode, the Path of Champions, where player engagement was highest. This move led to a slowdown of new content and updates for LOR's PvP modes, effectively sidelining the broader narrative potential of the game. It reflects Riot's broader approach of prioritizing projects with stronger financial performance, even if it means deprioritizing lore-rich games like LOR. Arcane represents the most significant disruption to League's canon yet. Unlike previous lore updates, which affected individual champions or regions, Arcane has reshaped the entire universe. Its success has made it the de facto main canon, sidelining characters and regions that don't align with its narrative focus. Champions like Jinx, Vi, Caitlyn, and Viktor have been elevated to central figures, while others, particularly those from regions like Ionia, Noxus, or the Freljord, have been left in the shadows. For longtime players, this creates a fear that beloved champions will be erased or rewritten to fit Arcane's aesthetic and tone. For many players, League's champions aren't just gameplay tools, they're personal. Fans form attachments to these characters, investing in their stories and identities over years of play. When champions are reworked or retconned, it feels like losing a part of that connection. Viktor's rework epitomizes this fear, that I can't help but empathize with as an enjoyer of the original Karma. It's not just about changing his design, it's about erasing a version of the character that resonated with a specific subset of players. And for those players, it raises an uncomfortable question. Who's next? Arcane has created a new benchmark for Riot's storytelling, but it also threatens to redefine League in a way that feels unrecognizable to its oldest and most loyal fans. Riot Games is essentially walking a tightrope. On one side are its longtime League of Legends players, dedicated fans who have endured over a decade of constant updates, lore rewrites, and gameplay changes. These players are deeply invested in the game, both emotionally and financially, and are fiercely protective of its identity. On the other side are the newer fans drawn in by Arcane. This audience is younger, more casual, and captivated by the storytelling and visual polish of the Netflix series. For Riot, the challenge is clear. How do you expand League's universe to capture the excitement of Arcane's audience without alienating your most loyal players? The answer so far has been to align League's lore and design with Arcane's aesthetic and narrative tone. Champions like Jinx, Vi, and Viktor have all been reimagined to match their Arcane portrayals, creating a more unified universe. But this strategy comes with risks, especially for a player base that already feels wary of Riot's shifting priorities. The success of Arcane has undoubtedly reshaped Riot's vision for League. For years, the game struggled to balance its competitive gameplay with its lore. Champions often felt disconnected from the broader narrative, and Runeterra's world building was inconsistent. Arcane changed that by presenting a tight, emotionally rich story centered on a few key characters. It gave Riot a blueprint for what League's narrative could be, a unified, compelling world that resonated with both gamers and non-gamers alike. But every strength comes with a trade-off. While Arcane has set a new standard for League storytelling, it's also reshaping the identity of the game itself. Longtime players see changes like Viktor's rework not just as aesthetic updates, but as symbolic of a broader shift away from the champions and stories that define League for over a decade. For these players, Riot's increasing focus on Arcane feels like losing a piece of the game's original soul. It's also worth noting the financial logic behind Riot's decisions. Arcane has opened up entirely new revenue streams for the company, from partnerships with games like Fortnite to merchandise and spin-off content. By aligning League more closely with Arcane, Riot is creating opportunities to monetize the franchise far beyond the game itself, but this strategy isn't without risk. League's core audience has always been its foundation, and alienating these players could undermine the game's long-term stability. While Arcane may attract new fans, there's no guarantee they'll transition into dedicated League players. As seen after Arcane's release, player numbers spiked temporarily, but didn't sustain long-term growth. Riot's gamble is clear. Integrate Arcane into League's identity to appeal to a wider audience while trying to hold on to its older, entrenched player base. Whether Riot can successfully navigate this tightrope remains to be seen, but as Viktor's rework has shown, every change, no matter how well intentioned, risks driving a deeper wedge between these two worlds. So, what do you think? Is Riot Games making the right call by aligning League of Legends with Arcane's vision, or is this a step too far? Are we witnessing the glorious evolution of League's identity, or its erasure? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear where you stand on this. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into gaming, storytelling, and the ever-evolving world of League of Legends. And hey, if you really want to support the channel, consider sharing this video with a friend who's just as passionate or frustrated about League as you are. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!